Jennifer, will you take the roll first, please?
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Boykin. Here. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Ortega. Ms. Higa. Here. Ms. Hendricks. Here. Mr. Rosenstiel. Here. For the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ms. Zumant. Mr. Unterman. Here. And for the State Controller, Mr. McGuire. Here. Chairperson Keeley, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, before we do that, is just a time check. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, about 25 minutes or so. So we have about 2.5 hours between now and our reception at 5 o'clock. We have about 2 hours set aside for the retirement board meeting, so we should be okay. So we'll just try to monitor that time. So with that, approval of the board agenda is item number 1. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Tom and seconded by Sharon. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Closed session, there's one item to report out of closed session. The Teachers Retirement Board took action to adjust the salaries for the CEO and CIO for the 2014-2015 year. It was an action we took in closed session earlier today. Which brings us to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the notice of board election. Is this an action item? Ed?
Thanks, Harry. This is the beginning of the season for electing the 3 board members, the 3 active board members that are subject to election by membership. And just to remind you, there's 2 members representing K through 12, one of whom can be an administrator, and then there's one representing the community college members, and they're elected by their respective constituencies. In the regulations that were adopted by the board pursuant to the statute, you're required to adopt a notice of election that sort of informs members that the nominations can be received, what the election period is, what's necessary to be eligible. There's a whole lot of information, and I draw your attention to attachment, you find it here, attachment 3, which begins on page 22 of the board, and that's the actual notice of election. So you would be adopting that election today. That would start the process. Once that's done, you'll see on in the notice of election what the timeline is for the different events of the election period on page 24. We will have on September 12th so just in another week or so, the board election packet will be available on our website, where they have the nomination information as well as information around what it means to be a board member, what your responsibilities are, what the time commitment is, all of that information. And people can then start soliciting and circulating nomination forms. Those have to be received by CalSTRS by March 2nd. And then the candidates can also submit a candidate statement form, and then there'll be a random drawing of the ballot in June. The election itself will take place beginning October 1st and run through October and November. And then in December, Jack will open the ballots and certify the results of the election, and then the winning candidates will take office beginning January 1st of 2016. So in order to qualify your candidacy, you need 250 active members of the DB program or the cash balance program who are otherwise eligible to vote for the election. And the ombudsman, the CalSTRS ombudsman, is the election coordinator. So there's a lot of information that will be available, as I said, on the website. We'll be reaching out to the different member organizations and provide them information so they can notify the members. We'll be letting the employers know about it, so it'll be a widespread communication about the fact that the process is now beginning. But you do need to adopt the notice of election, so I would recommend, staff recommends the adoption of the notice of election. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Any questions or comments for Ed?
Move adoption of the resolution.
Thank you, Grant. It's been moved by Grant to adopt the notice of election resolution as recommended by staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Michelle. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, thank you, Ed. Item number 8, this is also your item, Ed, the
Yes.
adoption of credible compensation regulations. This is an issue that has been before us on a couple of
Several
occasions.
times before.
So
Yep. So let me just sort of remind you, we started this process exactly a year ago where you directed us to beginning the regulatory process. And we had a couple of objectives of this process. One was that there was a need expressed by the employers and the membership to have some better clarity around what's creditable, to CalSTRS, what's creditable to the DB program, what's credible to the DBS program, and what's not creditable at all. We had used a guide in the past that wasn't the legal binding that it should have had, and as a result, there was sort of a lack of clear guidance coming from us about those issues. So that the people wanted to know, just tell me what is creditable and what is not creditable. The other reason that we wanted to provide some better clarity around the processes as it applies to spiking, for lack of a better term, what compensation is being paid at the end of someone's career that would inappropriately enhance their DB benefit. There's general principles in the statute, but we needed to have some regulations to provide some clarity so that it was clear to people that if compensation was paid in a particular manner, that there was a presumption that, in fact, it was spiking and therefore would be credited to the DBS program. So those were sort of the two objectives that we had. One was clarity around what's creditable, and second is clarity in terms of managing spiking. In the course of the year-long process, we've had 4 comment periods. This last comment period was in response to changes that were made at the request of the Department of Finance to address their concerns that we did address. In this last comment period, we had no comments at all related to the regulations, so we feel like we've got these pretty tight. We also, as part of the regulatory process, we asked Milliman to do an analysis of the fiscal impact of the proposed changes, and they gave us an analysis which concluded that it would be expected that the changes in what would, or the clarification of what would be creditable to CalSTRS would reduce employer and state contributions. Within, say, 4 years from now, the annual reduction in employer contributions could be as high as $56 million, and for the state could be as high as $22 million. So that will be as part of the record as well. And as just so that it's clear, what happens is if the board does in fact adopt the regulations, then the fiscal statement that we prepare as part of the package will go to the Department of Finance. They have to sign off on that. We've worked with them in terms of getting the language tightened up. We would anticipate it would be approved. Then it goes to the Office of Administrative Law. They'll do a review within 45 days. And then it will go to the Secretary of State to be filed, and then they will take effect on January 1st. So adoption of the amendment of the regulations today allows us to stay on that track so that these will take effect on January 1st of next year. But we feel very good about the process. We worked very closely with our employer and member stakeholders and others, and we would recommend that the board adopt the regulations at this time. Be happy to answer any questions.
Arena?
Yeah, no questions, Ed. Thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to say that I will be supporting the recommendation today. I think, as Ed has described, it's been an incredibly transparent process with having stakeholders involved, 4 comment periods, and the last one having addressed the issues that the Department of Finance staff raised. I think this has been a smoother process, largely as a result of this not being kind of a list of pay items. That is not the tradition, the pattern that the teacher compensation has followed. So it's really about bringing a process and clarity and a consistent treatment of the calculation of pensionable compensation going forward. So very happy to support the recommendation today.
Thank you for those very important comments. Anyone else with comments or questions for Ed? I too would just like to reiterate the process that staff went through with the stakeholder groups and the number of open periods for comments, public comments, and the fact that it's projected by our actuary that there will be cost savings for the employers and the state in a couple of years is nice to see. So I think before we take a vote on this item, there are folks at the microphone that would like to speak. Sal?
Sal Villasenor with the Association of California School Administrators. And I'd like to echo a lot of what's already been said about the clarity of the process, about the process, the openness of the process, the clarity that these regulations will bring for not only members but for school districts in particular, because these do impact school districts and their contracts that they develop with either superintendents or administrators, and bringing about this kind of clarity, I think, is going to help everyone understand what what's available and what can be credited, what cannot, and I think it's going in the right direction. The only thing I would ask, and I think STRS has been really good about this, is we continue to work together in the implementation phase of these regulations, because that's still going to mean a lot of work out in the field in educating what these regulations really mean at the local level and how they would be applied. So thanks again for all your work.
Thank you, Sal. Maggie?
Maggie Ellis, Chair, CTA Retirement Committee. I want to concur with Sal. Don't often do that with administrators, but I'll do that today. The process has been one that has been enlightening, I think, to both of us. As we've had dialogue, there's been a clearer understanding of school districts and what we go through, as well as CalSTRS and what they go through in trying to do credible comp. I know in discussing this with my district, they are eagerly waiting for this to just get put in writing so that the next phase of education and implementation can be put into place. This is the first course for CalSTRS University, so there's my second plug for your education. I just want to thank you again for including the stakeholders, and we always have that great open dialogue and produce a wonderful product that makes CalSTRS as transparent and good as you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Any other public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Sharon to adopt the credible compensation regulations as proposed by staff. Second by Arena. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 9 on our agenda is, actually item 9 through 13 are all information items, the first of which is item 9, the proposed fiscal year 2015-16 operating budget. Robin Madsen. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
So this is the first reading of the operation budget. So in July, we refreshed your minds on the budget for the 14-15 year, and now we're into planning for 15-16. So this is the first reading. We're looking for your input on the proposed changes that we put forward. Interestingly, this year, about almost 50% of the changes are due to adjustments that we're really making as the basis of decisions that have already been made in terms of salary increases, pro rata. And then we do have a series of budget change proposals that staff have worked hard to prepare and are presented here for your consideration. So I have a short overview, and then I'm just prepared to answer questions that you might have on the item if that pleases the board. Okay, so what we've done here is to show you the differences between the operational budget as we're proposing it this year as compared to, or for 15-16 as compared to this year. One of the things that's in these slides that was not in the write-up is that we've included reappropriation money for our tech funding line item. So at the time that we prepared the budgetary materials, we hadn't finalized those numbers, and so we've included those here, and you can see the accumulation of resources that we're building in that tech funding to allow us to support the pension solution and other business renew projects. So you'll see that in the change in the numbers here versus what is in the written item. This is just the strip portion. So the overall portion of the operational budget includes the health benefits fund as well as the deferred compensation fund. This is just the pure state teachers retirement plan. You'll see the separation by corporate governance, investment audits, and then here you see separately that enterprise projects or technology funding growth. We tried to put together a 5-year history of the BCPs that we've been asking for. You'll see the big change this last year for the Pension Solution Project. We're sustaining that level of request this year with another chunk of that 5-year funding plan. And then we have some highlights here of the BCPs themselves. The first one is the San Diego Member Service Center. So this is the finalization of that build-out plan to complete the member service centers in the areas of concentration of our member populations, both active and retired. In this particular BCP, we're not only funding the establishment of the San Diego Center and its operating costs, but we're also asking for funding to true up the operating expenditures in the other 4 centers. There were lease increases and technology support costs that we hadn't expected, and so we've put that money in here to make sure that we can run these centers on an ongoing basis. The other thing we've asked for is the addition of a staff member within facilities management to allow for that support of these now 5 other operating sites. The next one is additional staff within investments to support both the complexity of the portfolio, the scale of the portfolio, and the additional transfer of management from external to internal management, where we see tremendous cost savings. So there is $2.6 million in ongoing funding, along with 10 positions associated with this request. Finally, oh no, the next to the last one, sorry about that. So this request is to establish a funding pattern for the ongoing refresh of our technology infrastructure. So we've been in this building for 5 years, and some of the equipment that we moved into this building has now come to end of life. We're facing situations where we're out of operating support with the various vendors, and in recognizing that, we also did some long-term planning in terms of an ongoing refresh cycle, and so that's what this is the compilation of that infrastructure refresh as well as software licensing for very specific applications. But what we tried to do was to put together an ongoing plan for keeping our technology current through the upgrades that happen as business processes every day. So that's what this request is supporting. And then finally, we have a request to take a program that we've established out of the enterprise technology project budget to make it permanent, related to enterprise information management. This area is becoming critical not only just in supporting operations, but as we, again, automate more and more of our processes with complex technology, we need to figure out the priorities of our data management as well as the ownership of the data management. If we have redundant data, why? So that we can make sure that we have control over that information in a way that both will support operations as well as the reputation of CalSTRS and address some of the cybersecurity issues we talked about at the ARM committee meeting. So that's a summary of the budget change proposals as well as the overall ask from the operating budget perspective. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Arena, then Paul, and then Terry. Arena?
Thank you. Robin, I had a question going back to the San Diego
Member
Service Center. So the costs that have increased in the existing centers, you said were lease and technology increases.
Yeah.
Can you just say a little more about
Yeah, so the base rent increases were not initially in the plans, and so we've seen both escalations in those charges from our landlords, utilities, some parking, and that's the majority of the adjustment. There are some slight changes in the actual technology operating costs as well, but most of it's in the base rent.
Okay.
So there were escalation provisions in there that we hadn't forecast in a complete way.
Is that something that you can plan for in the San Diego proposal, or you won't anticipate those same issues?
We definitely have learned from this experience, and I can tell you that in looking at the trends, the earlier offices have the larger gap. So we've definitely gotten better at it and understanding how those lease escalation provisions work. But we didn't anticipate it initially when we put the asks together.
Again, this is the end of the road for us to build outs. This is not our final one for our current thinking.
The final service center?
Yes.
Member service center.
Paul?
So I've got a few questions on the second page of the board materials in the package. So I'm trying to understand, there's 2 tables on that page. The first table shows the strip budget going from 163 million to 186. That's about a 14% increase, with a relatively small number of FTE increases, only 1.5%. So obviously there's a lot in that 23 million that's not for new FTEs. And then looking down at the next one, I see the estimate of operational expenses as almost $14 million. And it says down in the footnote that reflects 1.8 million for compensation increases. So I'm trying to figure out where is this, what is this money being used for? The 23 million in that first table and the nearly 14 million in the second table.
So they're actually this, so I had to read this twice. So as I read it again, I found that we had been perhaps unclear. So there's about 10.03 million for BCPs, for budget change proposals, and there's about 13 million or almost 14 million for ongoing operational cost pro rata. And those include the salary increases, changes in benefit costs, retirement costs, and then our indirect charges from central service organizations within the state of California. Michelle, do you have a breakdown of that with you?
Not really, not to that level of
Do you
detail,
go?
but I do have.
Michelle?
You want to?
Michelle, could you come up to
You
the
wanna come up?
microphone and bring
Or-
up the
or
right
I'm
thing?
sorry, to-
It's okay.
Some of those costs are not our control. They're
No.
being fixed on us, of course, by
Right.
the collective bargaining agreements and the pro rata that comes through from the service agencies.
But you're right, we didn't break it out below the salary number, so. Okay, so, we've got retirement, we've got salary increases, we've got general expense, which would have been, probably,
It's also salary.
it's also salary, okay, so it's where we put the other associated costs. And then we've got almost $1 million in indirect charges from other agencies.
Okay, but still, I mean, if it's 1.8 million for salaries and benefits increases.
Yeah, that's the actual increase due to the salary increase.
Well, it
but-
says salaries
but
and benefits.
That's only, but then I've got another 12 million.
For what? So that's what I'm,
That,
I mean, what is the 12 mil? I understand, so you've got like 13.9, 1.8 is for salaries and benefits, so now we still have 12 million remaining.
for
And-
it's also for salaries, so the.
Also, why,
Right. So this is, the 1.8 is for the increase due to the collective bargaining agreements. But then we also adjust salaries because people are increasing steps. So as
Okay.
we move through the longevity pattern within existing classifications, there are step adjustments. And so that's what that is as well.
So if we have 14 million, 1 million is indirect cost increases that are imposed upon us, then 13 million is
It's actually-
is just compensation and benefit increases, 13
Yeah, it's
million?
actually almost 14 million. It's,
On a base of what? So what's that as a percentage of our compensation expenses?
the overall compensation is 77, 81. It's about 83 million.
So we've got close to 20% increase.
Yeah, we do, and those are step adjustments. So again, as people are in positions, there's the chance for a merit increase. So if you start at the bottom of the
yeah.
range,
Yeah.
and
So
so.
is that typical that every year we're seeing our compensation costs going up 20%?
Well, I think for a period of time, we didn't see that because we had the furlough offsets. So some of it wasn't as visible. It's more as we bring in staff, you're going to see more of that because a larger percentage of our staff won't have topped out. You can get to the top of a class and then this stops. But as you have new employees or employees that are getting promoted in place, as we bring in people, you're going to see more of that increase come through.
But why is that different now? Why are we bringing in more people now than we have in the past, or are we bringing in more people than we're going to in the future? It just seems to me that a 15 to 20% cost increase for compensation is a lot year over year when we're not really increasing FTEs. And I'm not sure how consistent that is with other parts of state government.
Well, so some of this is we haven't been asking for FTEs because we are monitoring our vacancy rate, and we're only asking for FTEs when we truly need the position. But as we go through vacancies and hiring, like we're doing for the Pension Solution Project, we are bringing in people without positions So we're hiring people. We will see adjustments to their salary over time. And we make that adjustment each year in the operating budget. That's been our pattern. I think I hear a question from you that I can go back and answer, and that's to see what that's been over
The question is, why is it, is that seems to be an awfully big percentage increase when we're not increasing FTEs? And is there a reason why we're seeing a 15, I haven't calculated it, but if
Yeah,
it's
no, you're right.
13 million on 85 million, that's you know, 15, 16%. That seems like a lot, and that seems like, if there's a one-time reason why that's happening, then maybe that's, you know, then we accept that. But if there's something built into our system where we're gonna see that, I don't know, it just
Right.
strikes me as a big number that is not, I would think, consistent with what we're seeing, you know, in other parts of state government.
Sure, and I appreciate your question, and what I'll need to go back and do is bring you the trends over time and show you how they've been offset with furloughs, so we can break out the net in there. We'll break it out for you. So that, it's not a problem. I do want to give you confidence that these numbers get reconciled back to the Department of Finance records and the payroll records from the SCO. So it's not answering your question, but I
Yeah,
want you to be
yeah.
confident that we are tying to control agencies on this part. So there's a merit increase process that occurs.
Right, and I raised the question because there was no kind of explanation
Sure,
here.
and I appreciate that.
It seemed like it was just the 1.8 million for
Right.
salary and benefit adjustments. I was wondering where the rest of it is, and I think it would be useful for us to
No,
see
very good questions.
the detail about how we, you know, what that increase is. Thank you.
So just for clarification, and I appreciate you fleshing out that issue because it's a big percentage number, so it would be helpful to know the how and why of that. So will we get that information when this comes back as a second reading? And just flush this specific expense out in greater detail?
Absolutely,
Okay.
there's no question
Terrific.
about that.
Terrific, thank you. Paul, anything else?
No, thank you.
Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the same issues that Mr. Rosensteel raised, but I also, on the same page, the first sentence of the paragraph that is right in between the two tables, talking about, I understand where the 24.5 million increase, operational budget increase, comes from, but it's derived from the prior year reversals and the baseline adjustments. And when you come back, would you please break those out to,
By category.
because there's no backup for that in this. I think I understand what you're doing there, but those are large numbers that I'd like to see broken down and explained,
Right, and
please.
again, some of our numbers look very much inflated because of the pension solution
Right.
chunk that's coming through. So, that's a $63 million
right.
item.
Please break those down. Thank you.
Glad to.
Any other questions, staff? Thank you. Seeing no more, we'll move to item number 10. Thank you, Robin.
Come back this November.
Yeah, Robin, when does this come back to us? Does this come back?
It comes back in November.
November.
And
Okay.
we can circulate details prior to them as well, as we can break a schedule out and
Thank you.
let you know that, and then include it in the item as well.
Thank
So,
you.
Thanks, Robin.
Item 10 is the System Risk Management Report. Robin and Cassandra.
This is the final risk management report for the 2013-14 fiscal year. Since 2013, staff review and update the enterprise risk report quarterly, linking risks and sub-risks to our strategic and operational business objectives. Those updates are in the materials in attachment 1. And in addition to the closeout of activities, staff conducted a risk assessment updating the content based on our changing environment. So this last quarter, when we updated the finalization of that risk report, we wanted to make sure that we closed out the items that we were completed. I mean, our environment has changed, but we're starting to do a more thorough assessment based on the changing areas that we're going to be focusing on moving forward. And staff's prepared to speak to the ones that we have closed out in this report, and Robin's going to speak to some of the changing strategies that we're going to be taking forward moving on in the reporting process.
One of the things that we're doing going forward is we are trying to integrate the existing reporting that's happening at the lower operational level. So this has been a process that's been standardized from the enterprise perspective at the executive level, but we want to make sure that within the operating environment that we're also looking at the next layer down that builds into these risks. So that we can make sure that we're consistent in terms of the reporting that we're doing to you with how we're managing it on the day-to-day operations basis. So in addition to clarifying the sub-risks that are remain appropriate in the 9 risk categories, we're also going through a process of breaking those down in the various operating areas. You'll notice that we are adding another metric to our measures. We're going to look at velocity, which is really related to the timing of the onset of an event. So we think that's important in terms of how much time we have to prepare, so that we can make this more reflective of the kind of response that we would need to have based on the materialization of a risk, so we can make sure we have the appropriate response thought through. So we really look forward to expanding and enhancing our reporting and processing within the management of the operations and using that to enrich our reporting to you. The other thing that I wanted to raise here, just as an outcome of the ARM committee discussion, is that we realize that in amongst these risks, there are risks that perhaps we all would like to explore at a more granular level. So I wanted to open up that topic for your input in terms of, as we look at these risks, which are very important and far-reaching, based on environmental factors or situational factors within the reputational environment, are there things that we want to be talking about in addition to status reporting to the board that might be helpful in terms of your decision-making and assistance to us and focusing attention and resources in the right area.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to follow on to what Robin just said. Based on the ARM committee discussion this morning, we had a really excellent educational presentation on cybersecurity. And one of the issues that came up, recommended by both our panel members as well as Bob Yetman, our consultant, was that we probably needed a little bit more discussion and focus and oversight on cybersecurity, as well as the opportunity to not only continue to be educated, but to do some of this oversight in closed session, so that we're not broadcasting to people who might be interested in a cyber attack, what our security measures are and things like that. So, I think the question that arose was whether to do this. Right now, this is a responsibility of the full board. Whether to leave it as a responsibility of the full board or move it to the ARM committee, which would maybe facilitate the more frequent oversight, especially in closed session, than leaving it with the full board. I think the ARM committee is happy to take on the responsibility, but I think the more important issue is that we need to do that. We need to have a little bit more concerted focus on this, as well as the opportunity to discuss it in closed session. So hopefully the rest of the board will find that makes some sense.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paul, for bringing that to our attention. And the cybersecurity conversation that your committee had this morning was very timely, given some of the widespread publicity around some security breaches that have taken place recently. Before I comment and weigh in on that suggestion, are there other committee members that have questions or want to express a view relative to the recommendation that the issue of cybersecurity be moved to the ARM committee specifically for further, a greater review and looking into more details around the whole issues of cybersecurity? So move it away from the full board and move it under the discretion of under the oversight of the ARM committee. Anybody want to comment on that? Or object to that? Because Michelle, you know?
No, I just,
Okay.
the deeper dive makes sense to me
Okay.
in a committee level.
Okay, seeing no other, no one else wants to speak on the issue, I would just support that recommendation and would suggest that's where that issue be placed. So it will fall under the reporting and oversight of the ARM committee and taken away from the full board. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving right along.